Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network.
'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven.
A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
Richard listens on sports. I'm here to talk to you about sports life and everything in between, and our guest today will not disappoint. It's been a busy couple of weeks, fresh from New York. Got to go back, visit my old haunts, run on my old middle school track, and relive some of those moments from childhood, basketball, etc. And today I'm going to get to ask a lot of questions about basketball, life professionally, emotional intelligence, and transitioning into the professional realm. So quick thank you to all those who've been downloading the ebook and reaching out to us about sponsorships and things of that nature. We appreciate all your growth and support. You know, we got to touch on the sad and bitter stuff of the last week, losing a couple public figures in the world of fashion and television in Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and in having lost my childhood friend, Mr. Andreas Cahan. This is a time to become more aware, more open, more communicative, more healing, and I hope that sports is a vehicle for that. I hope this show is a vehicle for that. So please reach out to us if you need resources, and you are not alone. And we hope that by bringing you guests who have lived and been through many hardships, overcome them, and shined despite challenges, that it will inspire you and encourage you as well to seek help and find more support and reasons to live. So sorry for that somber note, folks, but that is my hat, my psychologist hat, and want to tap into that. So on a lighter side of things, it's not often that we started the show as part of my own journey back to life, back to healthier living, and working with healthier, inspiring people. And about 18 months ago, I shared pretty publicly my own, tryout into adult sports, and tried out for adult version, 35 and over version of the Maccabi games, and I heard of this legendary center playing down low, and so it's fascinating to come full circle 18 months later that I have the privilege of sitting next to him and getting to meet this fascinating young man who is a USC graduate. He's been a realtor, he's been a broadcaster, and now transitioning into much, much more in the world of mental skills and basketball. We will call him the Bruce Lee of basketball for now. That's how I think we're going to code him. So look for some books out there or speeches on this topic. So I'm going to introduce Mr. David Blu in just a moment. Hold your applause. Then we're going to have our quick wellness fitness tip from Caitlin Patricia Weiler, who is facing some tornado warnings where she's at. So we appreciate her making time available. And then we're going to get a little bit more in depth with David into the world of martial arts, emotional intelligence, and basketball. So without further ado, it's my privilege, my honor, with gratitude to introduce Mr. David Blu.
Thank you, Richard. Great to be here.
Thank you, David. And apparently you've been making the talk show circuit lately.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Been here to the studio a couple times. I'm very familiar with the parking and the front desk and everything.
Rumors are you might have your own show someday here. I don't know.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yes. So we're going to get into a lot of different things, including what you're up to right now and our intersection with Shaolin schools of thought and what you learned from playing abroad. But without further ado, we're going to introduce and give a chance for Caitlin to give us her fitness and wellness expert tip for the week.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you. Welcome, Caitlin.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, hi David, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
So I had to ask you, you spent over a decade as a professional basketball player and then transitioned into a completely different career, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
And so, I'm dying to know how did your nutrition change or affect that transition after doing one thing for so long and transitioning to a completely different world that was not, in the athletic arena?
Actually, while I was in basketball, around the time I was 26, I had a knee surgery, and the doctor had suggested that I lose like 15 pounds. And I didn't even realize I had gained that weight because I just kept eating the way I ate in college. But by the time I turned 25, my metabolism slowed down, but I didn't realize it. So I started to get into different diets and try to lose weight in different ways. And I started to really become obsessed with my calorie intake, what I was eating, and also different forms of diets. And so one of the big things I did was I cut out gluten. I cut out red meat. And I started to focus on, vegetables and fruits and, brown rice if I needed carbs before games or practice. And that just became a lifestyle. And ultimately, what started off as trying to lose weight and try different diets and methods became a lifestyle. So I became in great shape towards the end of my career. So then when I transitioned out of my career, I had the lifestyle. It's like when you learn something, you can't unlearn it. So if I know that eating a certain way as a professional is going to keep me healthy, give me energy, make me perform at my highest level, then I'm not going to go back to another way of eating if when I get off the court, I want to maintain a healthy lifestyle. So fortunately, I created a lifestyle of eating during my playing days, and I've just transitioned that into my off the court life.
That's so amazing because you created a great foundation for yourself and then didn't really need to go through any massive changes, because that's always what I preach, that you do not need to, not a diet, it's a lifestyle change. And that's, clearly what kept you on track with that transition. So, and you must admit it's probably a lot of mental work too when you were an athlete to try to, lose all that weight and get through that injury, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I had 5 knee surgeries, so I know what it takes to get through injuries, but the diet portion of it was more like, when you're eating a team meal and you go down to the buffet and there's pasta and everyone else gets pasta or pizza after the meal, and I don't eat that stuff. And for the first week, 2 weeks, I really wanted to eat that stuff. But after a while, you don't miss that food because you start to feel so good about yourself on the court and off the court that you just want to keep feeling good. So you don't want to eat unhealthy, because when you do
right,
eat
or
healthy,
you do eat that right, and then you feel terrible.
You feel terrible, and you know it. And it got to the point where I would be feeling terrible while I was eating it, but it was so good, and I felt like, okay, I can give myself a day to eat maybe not, optimal food, but
right.
You got to give yourself some treats every now and then.
So was the motivation?
Right, it takes yourself to do that a certain amount of times before you're finally like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah, exactly. So was the motivation initially to get back on the court?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the motivation was I've always wanted to become a great player. And so part of becoming a great player is doing everything that great players do. And one of them is monitoring what they eat and taking care of their bodies. And while I was trying to get back on the court originally, it became, once I was back on the court, how do I optimize my level of performance? And then it was like, how do I just keep building on this and become better and better as a player? And as I kept going, I found foods that I liked, and I sort of got into different routines, and I learned about times of day to eat, how soon after workouts to eat, and I just became really focused and diligent on my diet or lifestyle of eating.
Now, you seem like someone who's very self-taught in all your experiences. Was it always that way, or did you have a nutritionist or
I've had a lot of help along the way, I will say, but I think that mostly it was just on my own, because with regard to Shaolin and the practices that I started to implement into my lifestyle and game, I just read books and I YouTubed, and I was disciplined enough to do it on my own. And I had people helping me with the food as far as trainers go, but just in conversation. But I've always set my own meal plans. I've always gone to the grocery store myself, and I've always, taken the time to prepare myself healthy meals.
Any follow-ups from you, Miss Caitlin?
Well, yes, no, it's wonderful. And I mean, I'll just transition that right into this week's tip is, don't try a diet. That those things are always temporary. To figure out what that is for yourself, to make lifestyle changes so that you can, do what David did and continue that, throughout your entire life and feel good, whether you're an athlete or not an athlete.
There you have it. Yes, it has to be resonant with your lifestyle. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're going to go a little bit more into it, Caitlin. We're going to let you get back. We hope you're safe over there.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you always for joining us and supporting us. And hope you and David can connect offline and figure out how to keep his public speaker search continuing.
Yeah,
thank you again,
Thank you.
Caitlin.
Great meeting you, Caitlin.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, David.
So, yes, we're grateful to have contributors to the show, longtime contributor Caitlin, and her Kate is her Instagram, and Kit Body Fitness, which will be all posted up on the social media promos. So it's interesting you mentioned, so I guess we'll begin with that since you let in with the Shaolin diet and lifestyle. So did you ever play actually in China, or you mentioned that like you just happened like in life to be in France, snowed in,
Yeah.
and like all of a sudden your inner Bruce Lee came out?
I've never played in China. I've been to China. But as a kid in the 1980s, Bruce Lee was my idol. I used to want to be a ninja when I grew up. I watched Ninja Turtles, and that was a big deal. And then in high school, Wu-Tang came out, and it was like everybody wanted to be within the Shaolin.
That's
and,
right. That was the pregame jam, right?
That was it. Kareem captured everything around me. But I did take some martial arts as a kid, but I stopped when I got to high school, and then I played my career. And then about 2007, I was, as I was explaining to you before the show, Richard, I was living in a small town in France and completely snowed in and by myself from my apartment to the gym. And I, after I had my 4th knee surgery, I needed to find an edge and how to get back on the court and become more effective. And so I started to, watch Bruce Lee movies again. And I started to do I started to read his books and read books about Taoism and Buddhism, and I started to do these practices, become obsessed with becoming in the best shape I could possibly be in. And that kind of led into, my game kind of taking another level, finding an edge that other guys didn't have because they didn't know about it. So it was something that I've always loved as a child and kind of found a great usage for it as an adult.
Yeah, I mean that's fantastic how you tied in even your love for cartoons, right? Like Bruce Lee was always on the TV, like it was like, what are these, and they were like always the voiceovers,
Yeah.
And having, read Phil Jackson's books earlier on, you were like, well, what's in the pudding over there? Like,
Right.
Is it really Phil Jackson, or is it just that they have Michael Jordan? Like, what are they doing that's getting them in this?
Well, it's a
mindset?
combination. and Steve Kerr is now the coach of the champions, and he
That's
played
right.
for Phil Jackson. So I think that everyone talks about how great Phil Jackson is, but I think they kind of don't go deep enough to really understand how great he is and the things that he had his teams doing, which is what helped them become so successful. It's just not widely talked about. They talk about how he had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and a crew. But that is true. But he put them together, in a way that maybe no one else could.
Right. That's the hardest thing, I think, for myself as an outsider looking in. As we see talent, we think, oh, well, it must be easy to get very talented, accomplished individuals to play together. But the hardest thing we know in life is to get over our own egos. And when you've been the best through high school, college, and now you're at the NBA elite level and you have to play, right? Like, that's the whole thing about Scottie Pippen, right? He was willing to be like the devoted number 2.
He was willing to do that, and he was great at it. But, as you said, he was probably the best player on every team he's been on up until he played with Jordan. But he was able to find his niche on the team and become the best at it. And he had the work ethic and the physical abilities to do that, and he made his own name, the way he did. And Scotty's one of my favorite players, by the way. So
is he really
one of my favorite players? Yeah.
That's who I was imitating in the driveway all the time. the Scottie Pippen pull-up banker.
Yeah. In my driveway, I was playing one-on-one against Michael Jordan, Magic, and Bird, and I'd always make the last shot to win the game on him. But that's how. Those types of things are things that I would do even as a pro, is play one-on-one against these guys at the end of shoot-around in my mind and make the game-winning shot. And as you do that for fun, when you get in a real game, you've done it so many times that when you get the ball in a real game, you have the confidence to know that if you shoot it, you're going to make it because you've already made thousands of game-winning shots against the best players in the world.
Right. Not only that, but when you take the shot, you're relaxed because it's like, of course I hit it over Magic.
Of course. It's all in your mind, They say sports is a lot to do with what you think, and I agree.
So we mentioned offline, we were talking and a big obstacle for me, being someone who grew up and playing some tough high schools, Roosevelt High School, Kew Gardens, where future NBA talents come out of, and was very physical, tough environments, where high school basketball, housed Dr. J and where Public Enemy is from, is a lot of this like taking the toughness and turning it to this like, especially on the East Coast, used to be a lot of like, your anger was like it was a war. We were kind of talking about this, like going into a basketball game was like a war. So how did you learn how to use that emotion or not let the anger get the best of you, or was there an instance when it did and you learned pretty well from it?
There was quite a few. At growing up in Los Angeles, my mother was Jewish, my dad's black. I had a challenging time and I had a lot of identity issues, so I had a lot of anger. And then to top that off, as I would go playing games, my dad was always very tough on me to be tough in games. And sometimes I wouldn't know how to control my toughness, let's say, my subconscious, which is putting me in a battle with another guy, another kid. And if he hits me, then I'm going to react in a certain way. And because I was generally taller than most guys, I'd end up hurting some kid and get in trouble and, go home and, get in trouble with my dad or get kicked out of a game or whatever it may be. And so I didn't really know how to control my anger on the court when I was in battle. And then I would say by the time I got to high school, I realized that I was a really good player and I had something to lose, which was, scholarship opportunities and a chance at playing professional. So I have to become more calm and not let my emotions take over. And so it was about that time that I started to, without knowing, transmutate some of that anger and frustrated energy into motivation. It's kind of like when you're doing the bench press and you get to 9 and 10, you're really angry at that weight and you want to throw it up. That's kind of what I realized was I can turn that on and off. And I learned that towards the end of games when I'm fatigued, I can turn it on. Or if I need to play better defense or do something more focused, I can transfer that anger and that energy, that aggressive energy, into focus. And I just sort of built on that starting in high school. And, that's kind of a big part of why I became successful, was because I could manage my emotions. And it really started in high school, just, by me going, I got to slow down here and I got too much to lose.
So who started to model for you how to contain emotions or express them healthily? Because that's a lot you're talking about right there. Like, I mean, being kind of targeted or picked on, that brings out a lot of insecurity, and if you don't know where it's coming from, that can lead to a lot of like shutdown on the court too. Like,
nobody taught me that. That's something I learned on my own over the course of my career and life, really. Being involved in those situations, only later in life, in fact, really in the last few months, that I learned what it was I was actually doing and what it was I was actually utilizing, which was emotional intelligence, which is actually a Western form of what the Taoists call qi, and the ability to control your energy in life. And so I began to really practice it, when I was 26, as I said, when I started to study more Shaolin and Taoist practices. But up until then, it was just learning the lessons through life and through experiences.
Was there something you told yourself about people who were, insensitive or trying to kind of, lack of a better word, bully you? Or, was there like you mentioned, is it like you've got more to play for? Was there something that you would, like a self-talk or mantra that you would kind of use to keep yourself focused?
It was basketball. It was knowing that anything that happened off the court, I could go play basketball and it would all disappear. And so basketball became the place where I could be myself and I could build up a lot of confidence. And when you build up a lot of confidence about yourself in a certain area, then if people have things to say about you in another area, it doesn't matter, because what you do is great and you can do something that you love that's great. And you stop worrying about what other people think about you and the opinions of others. I mean, throughout my career, I've had many people tell me I'm, too slow, or I can't jump high enough, or, I'm not a great defender. I mean, when you're a basketball player or an athlete or anybody in life, people will try and tell you that you're not good enough to do this or good enough to do that. And as an athlete, if you believe them, then you'll have problems. And so I just learned that I got to focus on my own game and my own, lifestyle. I can't worry if people think I'm slow. I just got to keep improving my foot speed. And as long as I put in work every day, I have confidence. And so it was kind of like nobody had to say anything to me to get me to do this stuff. It was just I realized who I was and what I was capable of.
Sounds like, very coachable as well, that you were willing to take feedback and criticism and still.
Well, it's funny, because I did get a reputation of not being coachable because I didn't like when coaches yelled at me, because I didn't feel like I needed to get yelled at. And I think that sometimes if a coach yells at you and you don't have a response, they think that you don't listen to what they're saying. But in reality, when the longer you go, it's kind of like, I know I made a mistake. I don't need someone to yell at me. But coaches always want to yell at their players. And if the players don't respond, or they don't get scared, or they don't, react in any way, then that player's not listening to what the coach says. And in my mind, the words that were going through my mind were, why is this guy yelling at me? I know what I did wrong. And so I think that in the early stages, that got me an uncoachable reputation. Yeah, but really, I just didn't want to be yelled at. I think it's wrong when people yell at people.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, there's different coaching styles now
Sure.
that have caught on, and that's considered kind of like the old school style, and now giving players a lot more freedom to express their own ways of improvement. It can cause controversy, but I think, as far as I'm concerned, like, there's been a new wave of coaches, even with the Bucks, and we're adapting to trusting players to make the adjustments of the players.
Well, they're the ones on the court. And I did play for some great coaches, and the best coaches I played for were the ones that took the advice and guidance of the guys that were actually on the court, carrying out the plays or the defensive assignments. Those were the coaches that had the most success, because rather than micromanaging the players, trusting the players, a team will have a lot more success if the coach trusts the players rather than try to micromanage them.
Yes. So was USC a good place for your development? Did you feel that?
Yeah, great place. That was high school was great because I really learned a lot from my coaches, and especially about discipline and physical fitness. And college was great. Henry Bibby was my coach, and I thought that at first it was hard because going from high school to college, the conditioning is a lot harder. The weights are different. You got all these more demands. So it was hard, and I felt like, why is the coach being so hard on me? But then as my career went along, I realized that he was showing me what I was capable of. And part of that, capability was controlling my emotions and energy. I'm thankful that my freshman year, Coach Bibby had us go see a sports psychologist, and we got to learn techniques such as visualization and breathing, and I was able to practice those throughout my college career and then on into my professional career. So college was a big point for me. That's also the time when I first got the key to a gym and I could go in at midnight, and that was the first time I got a shooting machine. That's when the gun first came out. So now here I'm at midnight getting up 1,000 shots when everyone else is out or doing whatever. That was a big turning point for me in my shooting ability, I think.
What's that feel like, to be in the gym by yourself?
It's amazing. It's the best feeling because you know that you're in the gym shooting and other people are not. But more importantly, being in the gym by myself at midnight in college was like being on my driveway at 9 p.m. when I was 8 years old. And the same feeling would wash over me of how much fun I'm having by myself shooting, 1,000 shots. It was like I was back in my driveway. And because I always did a lot of mental work, I could literally go back to that time and feel like I'm 8 years old in my driveway.
Yeah, and you touch on a couple of key things. One is, as a true, champion and competitor, the need to always have an advantage, to practice a little bit harder, a little bit more, to find any way to push yourself, to get in more shots, to be ready for the next moment. And the other thing is to keep it both in connection with your childhood and to keep it fun.
To keep it fun. Well, I guess the theta state of mind is like from age 7 to 12. So when you're ages 7 to 12, you can do step back jumpers through your legs. You can do anything you want on the court, and with no care in the world, and you're successful. And then when you get to high school, you try to make those same moves and you miss the shot, and there's consequences. Now you come out of the game, so you start to think a little bit more. And then when you get to college, there's more consequences for making mistakes on the court. And then when you become a pro, it's your job. And the guys that really master the game are the ones that master their mind and are able to take their game and their mentality back to when they're 8 years old, and they can just feel so free and comfortable and confident on the court and not care about missing shots. And it's those guys that shoot the ball and make it because they don't care if they miss, because they're just out there having fun. They love the game. They're out there playing. They love the hard work, and there's no pressure because they're playing basketball, and this is what they're going to do anyway. And that was one thing that I really tried to do, was enjoy the game as much as possible, win or lose, however I was playing or however the team was playing. Just being on the court is a privilege, and I was so grateful for it that it helped me become successful.
And what was that? Now, did you go straight from USC to playing abroad?
Yeah, so I after 4 years, I made Aliyah, so I became a citizen of Israel. I moved there. I played for Maccabi Tel Aviv.
Was that to move there for basketball or for spiritual reasons?
For basketball. I did not get drafted to the NBA. I didn't want to go to just the CBA at that time, the minor leagues. I wanted to go overseas, and I did that. And then I had a great career. I did have a preseason with the Sacramento Kings, so I had my cup of coffee in the NBA, and that was it. But
did you have any curiosity about Israel or that part of your background until that point?
You know what? Not a curiosity, but I had been there 4 years earlier or 5 years earlier for the Maccabi games, and so I had been to Israel. I'd toured. I'd seen a lot of the country.
Shout out to Maccabi USA following us today.
USA, there you go. Yeah, and I'll be trying out for the Masters team in the next go around. But
don't knock me over too quickly.
And by the way, it's funny you said center. You called me a center because I remember in college I used to hate when Coach Bibby, he'd break up the guards and the bigs, and he would send me down with the bigs because I always wanted to work out with the guards. I'm 6'7". I'm gonna be a guard in the NBA, as a pro. I need to work out my ball handling and shooting, And then my teammates would always say, "Back in the hole," they called it. So that was fun times.
Yeah, sorry for typecasting you, but that's what I'm always mad about, because when I went to all the big man camps at 6'4", and then it's like, yeah, you get to the college level, it's like you need to be a guard, and so that ship has sailed. So learn those ball handling skills.
That's right.
Kids.
I always tell kids the most important thing you can learn is ball handling, because that's something that everybody needs to do, and every team needs that. And so it's good for every player to know how to handle the ball. I wasn't a great ball handler, but that wasn't my role. So it's not like I was the most confident guy handling the ball. I could handle it when I needed to, but that wasn't my role. Now, back when I was 8 years old, I was a great ball handler, but over time defenders get better and, things change.
That's right. So you played over there for how long?
Well, I played in Israel for 7 seasons. I played for the Israeli national team for 2 summers. I played in Italy for 3 years and France for 1. So it was a total of 11 years.
Wow. And where was your favorite place to live in Israel?
Favorite place to live was in Israel. I lived in Tel Aviv, which is like, you could be in Miami
right on the beach,
or
huh?
right out at Venice Beach. Yeah, it was great time. I think for a lot of Americans, Israel in general is one of the best places to play because of the relationship between United States and Israel. And Tel Aviv is just an amazing city.
Yeah, they only speak English to you in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. They're not so kind in the other cities.
They want to practice their English. They want to come here and vacation here and do business here. So I was thankful and lucky to play there.
Now the fans over there, from my experience, were a lot different. Like just watching you practice or make a shot, they'll applaud like every single play and things like that.
The fans in Europe in general are different. I think the dynamic of what sports means to Europeans is different than what it means here in America. Over there, there's I would say there's a big country pride, let's say national team pride. I think that they over there enjoy the teamwork of basketball, particularly the ball movement, the screen setting, the backdoor cuts, the team play, whereas in America we value the athletes, the one-on-one moves, the dunking, the electrifying and fun plays. And over in Europe, I think they value the fundamentals and before shooting. Now in the NBA, there's a big premium on shooting, and people really enjoy watching guys like Steph Curry and Kevin Durant hitting these deep threes, which is awesome. And I think that is a skill that is really starting to come back in the NBA, but it's always been in Europe, I think.
Yeah, so was that a shift for you, or was that kind of a welcome appreciation that they were appreciating team basketball?
It was coming from college, it was kind of an easy transition because I was used to, giving the ball up and then cutting, knowing that I'll get it back at some point. So the transition to playing team basketball in Europe was fairly easy for me. The fact that I was big enough and strong enough to guard inside players, but also spread the court with my shooting, made my job a little bit more easier, and I was more effective. I think for me, the physical side of college prepared me really well for pros. And by the time I got to the professional ranks, it was, I don't want to say easy, but I had been pushed so hard in high school and college physically that by the time I got to the pros, I knew what it took to be in great condition and great shape. And practices as a pro are not as intense as when you're in college. So it was a good transition for me.
And you got to pick up little bits of lifestyle everywhere you went.
Everywhere I went, we traveled. I've lived in those specific countries and cities, but I've traveled all around Europe and Western Europe and all over Eastern Europe too.
Favorite city in Eastern Europe?
I really liked Ljubljana. I love the drive from Ljubljana to. There's a few different cities, but I'm a scenery guy and I love trees and I love countryside, and I love the countryside and the driving through the forests in Slovenia. I thought it was pretty.
I've heard beautiful things there, and bordering on the Italy on the Adriatic coast.
Yeah.
Well, we toyed with your journey into Shaolin and Tai Chi. So did that start to become a bigger thing for you, like as you were a player or as you exited professional ranks?
So that was big for me while I was a player. So because I wanted to get an edge, let's say I wanted to learn how to manage my energy, I wanted to learn how to become a better athlete. I started to do these different practices and read books and stuff. And what I learned about basketball and in particular is that, when you're in the zone, it feels great. When you're in the zone, everything slows down. So how can you get yourself into the zone on purpose? And you do that by consciously putting yourself into that zone. And one way of doing that is breathing. Understanding how to breathe, and then from there understanding how to control your energy and or change your energy into what you want it to be. And a big thing with Qigong is it's all about energy work and moving that energy around through breathing and through visualization. A lot of basketball is done with breathing and visualization. So by combining those two practices, it helped me become a more conscious player, help me, recover faster because I could do different things to help me recover faster. It also helped my footwork, and I was able to really, and what I've done now, what I teach is how I've isolated all the different footwork patterns that are in basketball, and I slowed them down into sort of a Tai Chi routine that I started to practice towards the end of my career. And it helped me get my feet to where I could put myself in situations quickly to get shots off and to be balanced and to move around the court. And so offensively, the Tai Chi practice helped in that sense. But a big part of it was the visualization and the breathing, just understanding how that works. It helped me.
And this was all self-taught, or did you find a teacher that started to help you?
That part was self-taught. I got into Kung Fu. I had a teacher here, a master here that I work with for a couple summers. I would do Kung Fu just to stay in shape and to learn some of the forms. Some of the forms look very similar to defensive positions in basketball, and so having the ability to hold let's say a horse stance from Kung Fu, that's a defensive stance,
centered,
right. So you have to learn in Kung Fu how to hold stances for a very long time, and you got to learn how to hold a defensive stance for a very long time if you want to be a great defender. So off season I would do really intense Kung Fu workouts, and then during the season I would just spend time researching and practicing these different practices.
Defensive drills. I'm getting them picturing through my head right now. Fast feet, and the comparison with the half moon in and out.
Yeah.
And it shows how much of basketball is positioning, is beating someone to the spot.
And a lot of it is also mental. I mean, if you have to believe you are something or you are somebody or you play a certain way if you want to play that way. And so a big part of martial arts is believing or doing things that maybe you didn't do before, but you got to believe you can do them in order to actually do them.
Or learning what beats you. I learned my...
or learning what beats you, that's
very
right.
straightforward, taller person mentality attack, and I would get sparring with like 5-foot women, and they would tag me and get out of there safely.
Well, weaknesses is a huge part of it. And so a big weakness that I had when I got into martial arts was I wasn't flexible. And a big weakness I had in basketball was I wasn't flexible. And so I had injuries. And so when I wanted to become a better martial artist, let's say, I had to stretch. And I had to stretch for hours and hours and hours. And if I wanted to be a more flexible and effective player on the court, I had to stretch for hours and hours and hours. And so finding your weakness and then making that your strength is how you become a better player or a better martial artist, or I think whatever you want to become. But you have to be honest with yourself, and I think that martial arts forces you to be honest with yourself, because if you can't do a certain kick, it's nobody's fault but your own. And so the only way to improve that is by you taking the initiative to stretch. And if you can't get in a defensive stance and move side to side comfortably and effectively because you're not flexible, then you have to stretch in order to become that defender you want to be. So those are kind of parallels that I thought about at the time.
I love it. I love defensive drills.
Me too.
I still try and take one charge a game, but back isn't absorbing it as well as it used to.
Yeah.
Got to learn how to tighten that core when you fall too.
There you go. Yeah, that's why I don't play much anymore. Takes too long to recover now.
That's right. But you did mention you are perhaps interested in preparing to play in the EuroLeague. Is that still a goal for you?
You know, it is. It is. You know, I'd find it. I'd have to find a team. But I played on Saturday pickup, and it's hard to recover now. You know, my body has taken its toll over a course of a career. So now it's like I guess I'd like to play maybe in the coming weeks. You know, but I have to get in a little bit better shape and get rid of some of my aches and pains.
Right. The muscles, yeah, it's not the same kind of contact.
No, it's not. And it's more about it's not even the contact, it's the running, it's the landing is what it is. The jumping's fine. It's the landing that hurts.
Landing while being shoved, right?
Yeah. All
When
that,
I get home, I'm like, what exactly is aching here?
Yeah.
What didn't happen well? Yeah. So, you mentioned being a mental warrior for life, and what has helped you in transitioning, because you are known very well now, what you may have been, you're saying, kind of picked on. I understand you're very popular in the Jewish community. You're very well known as a basketball player. So how do you deal with that level of celebrity, and then how do you transition that into letting your career shine in different manifestations?
Yeah, I retired in 2014, and since then I had tried to get into different businesses that were not in basketball. And I had some success, but not much. And really, I went through some life changes, also including losing my best friend to suicide a year and a half ago. So I know that's a terrible road to go. And he was also a Major League Baseball player.
Oh, wow.
And he retired, and he went through several years of not knowing what he was going to do. And depression sunk in and other issues, and he took his life a year and a half ago, and it was really sad. So I was going through also these challenges.
So this is a real thing, for athletes, right, in your identity, and then all of a sudden being at 20-something and having to figure out, who am I?
Who am I?
And everyone
or
expects
30.
you to know, right?
Everyone expects you to know, because they've all figured it out by the time they're 35, because they've had 10 years or 15 years of trying new things and figuring out who they are as people, whereas athletes are athletes for life, and then all of a sudden they're not, and it can be challenging. And so I went through my challenges, but I look at all these challenges looking back as great experiences to figure out who I'm not and what I love, and that's brought me back to the game of basketball. And it's brought me back to the game of basketball and allowed me to be able to feel confident that I can teach the game in the way that I know how. And it's not taught. I've never seen people teach basketball the way I teach my students. And, I feel good about it. And I think that's been helpful over the last couple of months to really put me on a path what I see can be a happy one and a rewarding one.
It sounds beautiful. I came upon a gym in Santa Monica a couple weeks ago, and I thought of you. I heard just a coach's voice, and I kind of was like, this sounds interesting. What's going on in there? And there was just 4 kids. 2 were dribbling and 2 on defense. And the whole thing was, defensive drills for forcing them to their weekend and things like that. So when you mention, Bruce Lee of basketball, how can we get high schoolers or before to start combining some of these Eastern principles?
You gotta hire somebody to do that. You gotta hire somebody to do that, because I can't.
Or how will you do it?
I mean that's what I do. That's what I'm setting off to do, is to teach kids how to control their emotions, understand that as human beings, their conscious level is what separates us human beings from animals. And as athletes, having understanding what's happening to you on the court can make you a more effective player. and that is, if you want to call it emotional intelligence, and that's the words that I use when I'm coaching, to keep it simple and to keep it familiar. But in reality, what I teach these kids is about their energy and what they're capable of as human beings. And I also teach kids that to give meaning to the game, because if they can't give meaning to the game, then they're just out there playing. And they, if they want to get better, it's up to them to get better. But they have to determine how bad do they want to get better, and then what are they willing to do to get better. And from there, I can gauge whether or not a kid is, willing to take the time to learn how to breathe and to take the time to work on his stretching. I think the biggest weakness of every kid I work out is they can't touch their toes, and they can barely do 10 push-ups. By the time I was 15, I could probably do 20 push-ups. So these are things that in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have video games. We didn't have, iPods or iPhones. We had to keep ourselves busy, and one way we did that was by shooting and by, push-ups and doing calf raises and trying to work on your game. And that's something that I tell kids is...
You didn't have those Reebok shoes that worked on your calves, did you?
I made some. My dad, those are called strength shoes, and my dad wouldn't buy them for me. So I went and I took a 2x4 and I sawed off a little box and I nailed it to my Vans. And I'd walk around my neighborhood
Saved
dribbling
$120.
I'd walk around the neighborhood in those block shoes dribbling the ball, But that's the thing. That's how much basketball meant to me. That's how much I wanted to get better. Not because, it was because I loved it. I loved the game, and I was confident. And as I saw that I would do something, I'd do a drill, and I wasn't good at it, and then I would do it again, and I was good at the drill, it made me feel good. Like, wow, I can do this. Now give me another drill, and give me another drill. And then you just keep building up and building up, and before you know it, you love getting better. And
which is the whole paradox about practice, and people, the Iverson thing about, when you talk about practice, right? Because it's like that is exactly where you build confidence.
In practice. And my college coaches used to stress, you got to get better every day. You got to get better every day. So every day you have to go to the gym and want to practice. If you want to practice, you're excited about practice, you wake up in the morning, you can't wait to get to practice, you're going to have a good practice. And that good practice is going to turn into a good game, because everybody's there watching practice. Coaches are watching practice. The coaches make their decisions on who gets to play in the games based on how you practice. And so if you practice well and you leave practice feeling confident about yourself, then you're going to get in the game. Coach is going to play you in the game because he has confidence in you, because he saw you in practice. Once you get in the game, you have confidence because you had a good practice. So you feel like you deserve to play well, you're prepared, and then you inevitably play well. And so that's why practice is so important. Practice also becomes the preparation mentally and physically for the game. Practices are harder than the games. Practices are 2 hours long, and they're 2 hours of running suicides and doing drills. And the game is how long you're in the game. 20 minutes, you're in the game just playing. You're not doing drills, you're not doing suicides, you're playing basketball. So if you train hard in practice, by the time you get to the game, it's easy.
Yeah, I was thinking about that watching some of these World Cup games. These guys running for 90 minutes, and I was like, well, they probably
run for 3 hours in practice. But that's the private victories that people don't see. People get to see the public victories, which are great. These great athletes out there on the floor, winning championships and MVPs. But there's a lot of work that goes in to get into that point, and it's the teams and the players that do the most work and are the most open-minded and incorporate different things into their game are the ones that shine in the public.
Yeah, this is amazing to hear, especially how, there's a book by John Kabat-Zinn called, Wherever You Go, There You Are. That here there's this evolution of basketball and playing 11 years accomplished professionally, and that, sometimes you realize, but that is who you are, no matter how many other things you try and how many things you're exposed to.
Well, and with my situation, absolutely. And the thing is also, it's if you have a gift, it's great to share it, and it's okay if it's a business to share it, because people value that gift. And so, for me, when I was trying to get into these different professions, it was like I was neglecting, the gift that I had as a kid. And speaking of a gift, I was born in 1980. the Los Angeles Lakers won their first championship with Magic Johnson, and I was in my mom's stomach in 1980, and she was watching the game. And then in 1982, they won their second championship, and I've got a picture of me with a basketball. So basketball has been my gift since before I was born. And so not being in the game was challenging, and then all of a sudden now I'm back in it, and it's like opened up a whole new concept and idea and a person that I didn't, expect was inside of me.
Right. Just trying to spend so much energy just to try and be different.
And why not just be yourself?
Yeah. Okay, so we've got a few minutes left, so we're going to do our quick rapid fire here, try and get you on your toes.
Great.
Maybe we'll keep it light, and then we'll wrap up and hear more about ways for people to get in touch with you and stay in touch with you. Do we have there's our graphic. Richard listens rapid fire. There you go. Yeah. Okay, 1 minute on the clock. Jarvis, maybe ish. Okay. Okay, Mr. David Blu. Best food in Israel.
The salad, Israeli salad, chopped salad.
Chopped salad, green or
with the greens, with tomatoes, onions, the whole thing. With some hummus on the side and tahina on top.
Wow, with the appropriate use of the letter chet. Wow. Favorite ab exercise since you mentioned it?
Probably the plank, and the different variations you can do with it with your legs and arms and stuff.
That's true. Longest plank you've held, front plank?
Probably a couple minutes.
Okay. Best NBA player you've played in a pickup game?
In a pickup game? Boy, I've played a lot. I can't even think about it right now. Maybe Rasul Butler when he was alive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So there's some good matchups with him.
Yeah. And he lived in L.A. and he's my height, and he was still playing. But I'm talking about within the last 4 years. Before that, I can't really recall, but I would say in what sticks out in my mind is Rasul Butler, because we had some pretty good pickup games in the last couple years.
Battles.
Yeah.
Okay. Rest in peace, Rasul Butler. Sorry about that. Okay. Your best or most applicable Chinese custom?
Oh, wow. Probably meditating. I mean, breathing and being conscious, I would say. I mean, studying the Taoism and the things that it entails.
Profession of choice, if not basketball?
Probably some type of coach.
Yeah. Or public speaker.
A public speaker, someone that is, I want to help people, so a motivational speaker or a motivational coach.
And you're speaking upcoming at where did that already pass? The Israeli festival or something the Federation invited you, is that right?
That was last week.
Oh,
that was
okay.
the Independence Day celebration. I am going to be a special guest at the Sinai Temple basketball camp this week on Wednesday.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah,
okay, enroll your kids right away. Okay. Yeah. Favorite rapper or musician?
Right now, rapper, I really like T Grizzly, musician, I also like I can't think of her name, but there's a few R&B singers that I like, but as far as rap goes right now, I really like T Grizzly.
Okay. Most inspirational film?
Wow. Good question.
Basketball or otherwise?
Or otherwise, yeah. I would say all of the Bruce Lee movies, because I've seen all of them so many times, and I mean, I love them every time I watch them.
Amazing. And lastly, you told me the team that knocked you out at the NCAA tournament and their best player.
Brent Blizzard was their best player at UNC Wilmington.
You don't forget that name, huh?
No. He also played on one of my old Italian teams the year after I left that particular team, but I remember he was on fire that game. It was a tough loss.
Oh, it's only one game. Anybody can get hot.
Anybody can get hot, man. All you need is one good game.
Wow. Well, that was a tough one to end on. Okay, that's our rapid fire. We've got a few minutes left. Oh, look at the blue basketball logo that Jarvis is pulling up. That's pretty cool. So if you're lucky enough to be at Sinai basketball camp this Wednesday, you get to hear David Blu speak. And so we're going to give David a chance to see how you can stay in touch with him or learn about him and what he's up to in the future.
Yeah, Facebook, Blue Basketball is my handle. That's probably the best, for my basketball ways. Mean Streets Management is she's my manager, Tamar Simone, out of New York, and she helps me get my speaking engagements. As far as the training goes and basketball, what I'm doing in that field, Blue Basketball on Facebook is the best way to check me out.
Well, again, we are privileged to have you here. We thank you for engaging us. I'm proud to get to know you as a colleague and friend, and someday I look to getting my shot swatted. That's okay. It's a rite of passage. I've accepted it.
I'll let you get it out.
Yeah, okay. And my hops for sure are worse than yours. We'll see. I've been working on those box jumps, and
there you go.
I'll gather all my chi before the game.
There you go.
But it's an honor to have you here, and we look forward to collaborating. And who knows, that's John Adams Middle School. I went by their gym, so if you're out there, David Blu can help you with those star players. You're working on those drills in the hot gym on a Sunday, and any other schools in the LA area, or will you go nationwide? I don't know.
I mean, I would. Yeah, absolutely.
See,
basketball is a global sport. Everybody's trying to get better.
That's right.
Everybody's trying to look for an edge. Maybe I've got the edge.
That's right. So if you want that winning edge, keep listening to Richard Listens and give Blue Basketball a shout out. We thank all of you for your support, for listening in, for all the downloads on iTunes and now Spotify, and sharing it with your friends across the globe, especially now anyone interested in martial arts or Eastern philosophies. Now you've found the link to the basketball mindset and those teachings. We will be back. We have a host of fresh guests for you. We will announce our upcoming lineup soon. Look out for our mental tips videos, which we're going to be sharing weekly. And feel free to sign up and drop us your email address and contact to stay in touch and keep you posted on all the great things and travels we're doing in the world. And again, Richard Listens on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook /Richard Listens. We thank you all for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day, everybody. Out.